The Kelveran expanse was known as a place of silence, an empty stretch of space claimed by no empire, watched closely by many. It was where treaties were signed, where fragile peace was often kept alive through careful distance. But that silence shattered the moment a massive vessel burst out of hyperspace, dark and imposing, its hull glinting with cold steel under the light of a dying blue star. The ship didn't broadcast any identification codes, no standard IFF signals that would announce its intentions or allegiance. It simply arrived and hovered like a giant watching eye. The words stenciled along its side were unmistakable even in alien language translation systems: unyielding resolve. Those words alone struck a strange chord in the hearts of the border patrol officers of the Kelveran Confederacy. The ship's design didn't match the usual Earth diplomatic vessels they had studied. It was longer, heavier, and bristled with strange protrusions. Turrets, perhaps. Antennae, maybe. But many of them looked like weapons, or worse, tools for something unknown. The ship wasn't moving aggressively. In fact, it remained eerily still. But there was something about it, something that made even veteran officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Its silence was not peaceful. It felt like the quiet before a storm. Inside the control chamber of the Confederacy's border station, Commander Harith Silverin narrowed his eyes at the holodisplay. The sensors kept failing to penetrate the deeper layers of the ship. It had shielding, but not the kind meant for defense. It was more like a cloak, hiding what lay beneath. And the materials. Not even the databanks could identify half the alloys used in the hull. That kind of mystery was dangerous, especially when it came from Earth. First contact protocols had been agreed upon cycles ago. Earth would send a diplomatic fleet, small and unarmed, escorted by neutral observers. But this was not that. This was a dreadnought, a class of ship usually reserved for wartime, and it had come alone. Why? The Confederacy was not a species. It was a collection of them, a council of many minds with many instincts. Some wanted to hail the ship immediately. Others wanted to raise shields. One voice in the council room, however, suggested something more subtle. "If we cannot see what they bring," said a counselor from the Verine species, "let us send something that can." A stealth cruiser, Vothar's Whisper, was dispatched within minutes. Small, fast, and equipped with high-range scanning probes, it would not be seen easily. Its mission was simple: get close enough to scan the unyielding. Resolve, report back what it found, and avoid any contact. They needed answers before making decisions. Because if this ship meant war, the Confederacy needed to prepare. And if it didn't, then the humans had built something terrifying just for show. Either way, understanding the truth was urgent. The stealth cruiser faded into dark space and began its slow approach. Tension across the Confederacy grew. Was this the beginning of something dangerous, or a misunderstanding waiting to be solved? No one knew for certain. But one thing was clear to everyone watching the human dreadnought from their hidden positions. It was not a ship built for peace. And yet, it had not fired. It had not moved. It simply waited, like a predator at rest. And that, perhaps, was the most frightening thing of all. The silence of space stretched endlessly as the stealth cruiser Vothar's Whisper drifted closer toward the massive human warship. Unyielding resolve. Cloaked under layers of distortion fields and sensor-masking technology, the alien vessel remained invisible to all but the most advanced detection systems. And yet, as it approached the dreadnought, there was a strange feeling among the Kelveran crew, an unease they couldn't quite explain, as though they were being watched, even though every reading said otherwise. Commander Relvar stood at the edge of the control platform, his three eyes fixed on the shifting data being fed to the displays. He gave the order, and the ship deployed its long-range quantum probes, tiny, fast, and nearly undetectable. They launched silently into the black, slipping through the gaps between dimensions, and approached the Resolve like cautious insects nearing a sleeping giant. At first, everything appeared quiet. The human warship showed no active weapon systems, no engine flares, no sudden movements. It floated with an eerie calm, like a monument or a tomb. But when the scans reached the outer hull, the mystery deepened. The dreadnought's armor was like nothing the Confederacy had ever encountered. It wasn't just thick, it was alive in a way. Nanostructures shifted beneath the surface like tiny threads weaving themselves together. When the probes pulsed it with microradiation, the armor shimmered slightly, reacting in real time to an invisible threat. Self-repairing composite, one of the technicians whispered, awe in their voice, but layered with energy reactive coating. And something else, something we can't identify. Relvar's expression darkened. The probes moved deeper, scanning the engines, expecting to find massive cores and heat trails that matched the ship's sheer size. But what they found made even the most experienced engineers aboard Vothar's Whisper pause. The engines were small, too small, almost. Yet the energy they contained was immense. Beyond what should be possible, beyond anything that should fit in that space. Reactor readings showed containment fields capable of controlling a star core ignition. The power output could have fed a planetary shield network for decades. And yet the engines were idle, quiet, barely even humming. Why would a ship like this hold so much power and stay completely still? Moving to the interior scans, the probes hit resistance. The walls of the ship had strange electromagnetic patterns that seemed to shift constantly. Artificial noise confused. The scanners, like 1,000 silent voices whispering nonsense across the data streams. They caught glimpses of internal corridors, metallic, clean, but empty. No life signs, no movement. Either the humans were hiding their crew behind heavy shielding, or something stranger was happening inside. Just as the probe attempted to bypass a deeper system, what appeared to be a central command interface, something changed. The data stream froze, the visuals blurred, and for a single moment, the scanning equipment on board Vothar's Whisper picked up a spike, just one, of active sensor feedback. It wasn't from the probe. It was from the Resolve. A single ping. Not a weapon lock, not a targeting system, just a gentle touch, like a hand brushing against theirs in the dark. A signal. A response. The human ship had noticed. Every system on Vothar's Whisper went quiet for half a second. Lights flickered, consoles rebooted. No damage, no alarm. But a message was received, buried in the data. It wasn't words, not in any language they recognized. It was more like a warning. A sensation that burned in the minds of those who read it. The feeling was clear. Enough. The stealth cruiser backed off, its crew tense, unsure what they had awakened. Inside the great silence of space, the unyielding Resolve remained. Still, unchanged on the outside. But now every Kelveron officer watching it felt something different. The ship was no longer a mystery. It was a threat. And it knew they were watching. Inside the cold, dimly lit control deck of Vothar's Whisper, the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing second. The quantum probes, now deep within the scanning sequence, began feeding back streams of information that confused, amazed, and alarmed the Kelveron crew. It wasn't just advanced, it was beyond comprehension. The first major discovery was an artificial intelligence system, except it wasn't. Like the centralized AIs known in the Confederacy. This one was distributed across the entire ship, its presence threaded into every bulkhead, every system, every relay. The ship itself seemed alive in a digital sense, but what truly stunned the analysts was the speed. The AI was operating at quantum efficiency, processing and reacting to inputs faster than any known system, predicting potential threats before they even manifested. And the strange part? It wasn't doing anything aggressive. It was simply watching, listening, waiting. As the probes moved toward the internal systems that connected to the bridge, another mystery unfolded. The human crew was tied directly to the ship, not just through terminals or interfaces, but through redundant neural links. It was as if their minds were partially fused with the system. This wasn't just command through voice or control panels, it was thought-driven. Reflexes, emotions, focus, all of it streamed directly into the ship's decision-making process. It made unyielding resolve not just fast and powerful, but almost aware. A living warship with a human soul at its core. Commander Relvar could barely believe the reports appearing on the holo displays. "They're not just commanding it," he murmured, voice low. "They're part of it." But nothing so far explained the raw fear some of the crew felt until the scans reached the weapons bay. At first, the readouts showed the expected, high-yield antimatter warheads, enough to level moons. Then came the kinetic weapons, massive, rods of dense metal, housed in vacuum tubes, each one the size of a small shuttle. When fired at relativistic speed, they could penetrate planetary crusts. These were not weapons of defense. They were weapons of finality. But it wasn't over. In the deepest section of the weapons chamber, the probe found something else. Something shielded behind layered magnetic fields, quantum locks, and rotating energy signatures. A containment field. At first, the systems couldn't identify what it held. The data was unstable. But then, for a brief moment, the signal resolved. Inside the containment field was something that didn't fit any known category of matter or energy. It had no mass, but it distorted gravity. It had no heartbeat, but it pulsed like it was alive. And then the readings changed. The unknown energy spiked, just slightly, but enough for the scanning probe to record it. And in that moment, every display aboard Vothar's whisper dimmed, and a low hum echoed through the ship's systems. The energy within the field had noticed the scan. It was awake, and worse, it was angry. No one spoke for a full minute. Even the technicians who usually filled the air with theory and chatter sat frozen, staring at the impossible. What had the humans created? Or worse, what had they captured? The answer didn't come in words from the data. It came in the form of a single direct communication. Not through open channels, but through the probe itself, as if the ship had reached out and spoken through the machine. A single sentence appeared on the main console in sharp, glowing symbols, translated instantly by the universal language systems. "Curiosity is dangerous." That was all. No threat, no explanation. But the meaning was clear. The humans had seen the scan. They had allowed it, up to a point. But now, the line had been crossed. Commander Relvar gave the order to shut down the scan immediately. The probe was recalled, its data encrypted and sealed. Whatever the Confederacy thought it knew about Earth, about humanity, they were wrong. Unyielding Resolve was not just a ship. It was a guardian, a warning, and maybe even a prison. And somewhere inside it, something stirred with power that should not belong in any galaxy. The Kelverin crew withdrew, but none of them felt safe anymore. Because now they understood. The humans hadn't just come prepared for war. They had come prepared for anything. A deep silence filled the command deck of Vothar's whisper, heavier than before. The crew had pulled the probe back, shut down all active scans, and now watched the human warship with a mix of dread and awe. Every officer aboard the stealth cruiser, from the analyst to the navigation team, felt a strange tension in the air, as if the ship they were observing wasn't just a vessel, but something far greater, far more dangerous. Commander Relvar stood motionless before the main display, staring at the image of unyielding resolve, its massive frame casting a shadow across the stars. It still hadn't moved. No power surge, no shields raised, no sign of hostility. But somehow, that calm was what disturbed them most. They had violated its privacy, studied its secrets, and yet it remained still, unbothered, confident. Such confidence didn't come from arrogance. It came from knowing exactly what you were capable of. And that realization sent a quiet chill through the Kelvaron crew. Relvar ordered a full analysis on human military history, digging into ancient and modern records of Earth's defense policies. What they found stunned even the most hardened strategists. Humans, once known across the stars as newcomers striving for peace and unity, had changed. Their early days in space were filled with diplomacy, exploration, and careful negotiation. But somewhere along the way, after encountering threats that nearly wiped them out, their military doctrine had evolved. The Confederacy's systems uncovered a terrifying phrase repeated again and again in human files: total deterrence. It wasn't a strategy of attack, nor a tactic of defense. It was something different. It meant building power so absolute that no enemy would ever dare to strike first. It meant preparing not to win wars, but to end them before they began. The unyielding resolve, it seemed, was the ultimate embodiment of that belief. Every part of its design, from its armor to its weapons, from its AI to its unknown sentient core, was not meant for conquest. It was built for one purpose: to stop war through fear alone. A mobile apocalypse with a name that promised exactly what it would deliver. Even more unsettling was the human response, or lack of one. They knew they had been scanned. The probe had touched parts of the ship it was never meant to see. The Resolve had even issued a warning, subtle yet unmistakable. But the humans still made no move. They didn't power weapons. They didn't activate shields. They simply waited. It was as if they were saying, "We don't need to prepare. We're already ready." No one aboard the Kelvaron cruiser could speak openly about it, but they all felt it. The humans didn't want to start a war. They wanted to stop one before it began, and they were willing to stake everything on the power of fear and restraint. That kind of doctrine was rare, dangerous, and in its own way, brilliant. Then, something changed. A soft tone rang through, the communication systems of the Vothar's whisper. It wasn't a demand or an attack, it was a transmission. The human ship had begun sending a message, a simple signal repeating through all frequencies. But it wasn't a sentence or a warning. This time it was numbers, a countdown. The digits glowed across every console, slow and steady, each second ticking down toward something unknown. No explanation followed. Just the countdown, repeating in perfect rhythm. Commander Relvar ordered a full defensive posture, even though it would do no good against a ship like the Resolve. Across the Kelvaron Confederacy, alerts were quietly raised, and fleets were quietly repositioned. No one dared to make the first move. Everyone was waiting, watching, wondering what would happen when the countdown reached 0. As the glowing numbers of the countdown echoed across every screen in Kelvaron space, the weight of those slowly falling digits began to press heavily on every mind watching. Command centers, military hubs, orbital stations, all of them were tuned in, locked onto the same silent message being transmitted from the unyielding Resolve. It wasn't an attack, not even a demand, just a ticking clock, constant and calm, moving closer to something unknown. Then the next message came, this time clear and undeniable, echoing across every secured channel, encrypted language, and emergency frequency of the Confederacy. This is a deterrence vessel of the Terran fleet. We are here for diplomacy. Stand down or be removed. The voice was flat, emotionless, clearly synthetic, but there was no mistaking its meaning. It didn't boast, it didn't threaten with anger. It stated facts, backed by the cold, quiet presence of a ship that could turn stars into shadows. Inside the high chambers of the Kelvaron High Council, panic spread faster than anyone could contain it. Some argued to open fire immediately, claiming the countdown was proof of an imminent attack. Others demanded a full retreat, fearing they had already pushed the humans too far. But there was no unity, no single voice to lead them, just overlapping fears and rising pressure as every second ticked closer to zero. On the unyielding resolve, there was no tension. The crew moved with calm purpose, each one aware of their role, trained for moments like this. Not war, but the edge of it. Deep, inside the ship, behind layers of command decks and hardened corridors, a lone human stood before a sleek shuttle marked with diplomatic insignia. Envoy Commander Elias Rourke adjusted the cuffs of his simple black uniform. No weapons, no armor, just a calm presence and an ancient leather-bound book held tightly in one hand. The book was symbolic, a relic from Earth's first interstellar negotiations. He had brought it not to impress, but to remind both sides of how far things could go if diplomacy failed. Rourke wasn't just a speaker. He was a closer. The kind of man humanity sent when they wanted peace, but peace on their terms. He stepped into the shuttle as the bay doors opened slowly, revealing the endless black outside. No one stopped. Him. No one needed to. The ship itself had made the first move already. Back in Confederacy space, military fleets scrambled into position, unsure whether to protect or flee. The countdown showed only seconds remaining now, each one slower than the last, each one drawing the eyes of trillions. Across command centers, breath was held. Claws gripped consoles, feathers tightened, scales bristled. Every species, every soul frozen in anticipation. They had expected a weapon, a blast, perhaps even a system-wide blackout. They had braced for chaos. But when the countdown hit 0, there was none of that. There was no sound, no shockwave, no sudden change. Just silence. Deep, consuming, deliberate silence. The unyielding resolve did not fire. It did not move. It simply stopped, transmitting. The countdown ended and nothing happened. But for those watching, that silence was not relief. It was tension, stretched even tighter than before. What did it mean? Was it a final warning? A sign of mercy? Or something they hadn't yet understood? As questions filled every chamber of the Confederacy, a single shuttle detached from the human ship, its engines barely registering on scans. It carried no weapons, no escort, just a diplomatic code and one calm heartbeat. It moved with the same confidence as the ship that had sent it, crossing the space between two civilizations like a blade through fog. The humans hadn't fired. They hadn't needed to. Their silence spoke louder than any weapon. And now, they were sending a voice to follow it. The shuttle from the unyielding resolve moved like a whisper through space, gliding without hurry, without fear, and without escort. It docked gently with the Kelveran flagship Viertal, the heart of the Confederacy's fleet, where every admiral, ambassador, and strategist waited with a mix of dread and disbelief. No one knew what to expect. After all, they had scanned a DI, human warship, uncovered terrifying truths, and triggered a countdown that had ended in silence. And now, instead of retaliation or negotiation teams, they were being sent just one man. Envoy Commander Elias Rourke stepped out of the shuttle alone. No armor protected him. No guards walked beside him. He carried nothing but a small tablet, a silver pin on his chest marking him as a peace envoy, and an aura that filled the docking bay like gravity. The Kelveran guards flinched at first, unsure whether to greet or arrest him, but something about his calm eyes and steady walk made them hesitate. Rourke didn't speak until he reached the chamber where the council awaited him, a place filled with species of every shape and voice, all watching with narrowed eyes and hidden tension. He stood before them, still calm, and when he spoke, his voice was not loud, but it carried weight. "You asked who we are," he said, his eyes sweeping across the room. "And your scans gave you answers, partial ones. You saw the ship. You saw the weapons. You saw the thing we carry inside." A few counselors twitched at that. He continued, "What you didn't see, what the scans couldn't show, is why. You think we came for war, but we built resolve to end wars before they begin. Not to conquer, but to stop anyone from thinking conquest was still an option." He paused, letting the silence settle before speaking again. "Humanity knows war. Too well. We've burned in it. We've rebuilt from it. And after surviving what no species should have to, we decided on something different. We do not attack first, but we do not fall second. We come prepared not to lose." His words hung in the air, clear and firm, without arrogance but filled with certainty. Some members of the Kelveran Council leaned forward, intrigued. Others sat frozen, struggling with the quiet truth in his words. Rourke looked directly at the central speaker, who had long called for caution. "The scan was your test," he said. "We saw it, we allowed it, and we waited to see your reaction. You failed, but we believe in second chances." Then he smiled, only slightly, and added, "We don't want to fight, but we will win if we do." The chamber remained utterly still. Even the translation system slowed, as if giving every mind time to process the weight of those words. For a moment, it seemed like peace might take root. That understanding had been reached. But not everyone in the room believed in second chances. From one corner of the chamber, Admiral Krelzon of the Vakari stood sharply. His species had long distrusted humanity, even before first contact. To him, ships like Resolve were not deterrents. They were threats wrapped in politeness. "You speak of peace," he growled, "but you fly a weapon into our skies. You point it at us and expect us to bow to fear." His voice rose, sharp and furious. "We do not submit to silence. We answer it." And with that, he gave a single order through a private channel. Somewhere on the outer edge of the Kelveron formation, a weapons ship locked onto the unyielding Resolve. A charged pulse cannon fired, a bright blue beam of energy ripping across the stars, heading straight for the heart of the human warship. No one had expected it, not even the Council. And as the energy bolt rushed forward, eyes turned back to Elias Rourke. He did not flinch. He did not speak. He simply watched, quietly, as if he already knew what would happen next. The energy beam launched by the Kelveron warship cut through space like a blade of fury, burning bright across the void, a direct shot aimed at the heart of the unyielding Resolve. But before it even reached halfway, before the energy spike could complete its deadly charge, the human vessel responded. There was no dramatic explosion, no weapons fired in return. Instead, the space around the attacking fleet shifted, just slightly, just enough. Invisible waves pulsed from the Resolve, ripples in gravity that bent the laws of motion with eerie precision. In less than 3 seconds, every Kelveron ship involved in the strike lost power to its weapon systems. Cannons powered down, targeting arrays reset themselves, and missiles froze mid-launch, falling harmlessly into drift. Life support remained intact. Engines stayed stable. Not a single life was lost. Not a single hull was breached. It was not destruction. It was control. Commander Rourke didn't move an inch as the display behind him showed the attack's failure in real time. His face stayed calm, his hands still at his sides, his voice steady. "That was your second test," he said softly, looking not at Admiral Krelzon, but at the entire council. "And our second response." A deep silence fell across the chamber, but this one felt different from before. It wasn't just fear. It was understanding. The unyielding Resolve had not retaliated, with fire but with power held in perfect check. It had responded with mastery, not of weapons, but of restraint. The message was unmistakable. Humanity had evolved beyond conquest, beyond reactionary violence, but it had not abandoned strength. They had built machines that could end worlds, and then taught those machines patience. The Confederacy had never seen anything like it. Not in all their centuries of interstellar engagement. Peace was being offered again, not begged for, not demanded, but extended like a hand from across a wide and dangerous bridge. And this time, the Kelveron Confederacy accepted. The Council officially called off all military actions. Diplomatic channels were opened immediately, and Rourke was invited to speak not only as an envoy, but as a partner in dialogue. The Confederacy's internal systems updated quietly that same day. A new protocol was inserted into every strategic database, tagged with red-level priority. In the event of future Terran encounters, all actions are to be measured, respectful, and non-aggressive, unless absolutely necessary. The reasoning was simple, not fear but survival. Because while the humans spoke of peace, they had shown something that very few civilizations ever had: the ability to win any fight and the choice not to. That was more powerful than any weapon. Later, in a secure chamber deep within the Confederacy's military intelligence archives, the full report on the unyielding resolve was finalized. Every detail was logged, from its hull composition to its AI design, from its antimatter warheads to the strange living energy contained within its core. But no single description captured the full meaning of what the Confederacy had witnessed. And so, at the very end of the report, beneath the technical data and diplomatic summaries, a simple one-word classification was entered into the official files. It would be taught in military academies, whispered in political halls, and remembered by every strategist who ever looked up at the stars and wondered about humanity.